Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Bolt, the official Ancilla podcast. This is episode 2, and we have Dr. Buchanan on the show later on today. We're going to give him some trivia because he is the smartest man on campus. But before we go into that, we're going to talk about March Madness because it's that time of year. Richard, you start us off.
Yeah, it's been crazy. The upsets that have happened and the games, and I feel like one of the most interesting games that has happened so far is definitely the Duke and UCF game.
UCF got ripped off.
Yeah, they definitely got ripped off. And I feel like this is, there's a huge hype about Taco Fall, the 7'6" guy.
Yeah, he's freaking huge.
He's huge. The guy, he's not very talented. Taco Fall, he's not very talented, but he has that strength and he has the height. And I feel like that helped UCF a lot throughout the whole season, and that's why they got here. With Duke, though, everybody's jumping in on the Duke bandwagon.
I never do. I hate Duke. I hate Duke with a burning passion.
Yeah, you see, we're not trying to show any bias here, but I got to show my bias. I definitely despise the Duke bandwagon.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Zion Williamson. We can have a whole episode about this. Like, I can honestly talk about this as little as I know about basketball. The guy should not have even been in the NCAA. He should have just gone straight to the NBA.
Yeah,
just like LeBron James.
The issue is the one and done rule, which we talked about before when we had Tyshawn and AJ on the show. The one and done rule is stupid. If anything, they have if the NBA wants to have a rule kind of like that, at least have them have it to where they have to be in the developmental league for at least a season or something like that.
Yeah.
At least do that, and not force them to go to college because Zion could have done what LeBron James did, just went straight to NBA after high school. He has that much talent.
I mean, he is talented. Like, honestly, like I can give him that, and RJ Barrett and Reddish also as well. Those three are very talented.
Yeah,
and it's like a good performance that they gave.
Right, but okay, I'm a little biased here, but we're gonna jump into the Purdue and Villanova game.
Oh,
okay. I was not expecting Purdue to beat the holy crap out of Villanova.
I
was expecting it to be somewhat close. I was like, a lot of people predicted Nova to win. I had Purdue in the Sweet 16. Obviously, I thought they were going to beat Villanova, but I was not expecting that. Carson Edwards had 42 points.
That was insane.
And that's the biggest loss that Villanova has had in program history. And it is to my Purdue Boilermakers.
I know. I had Villanova winning. I didn't have Purdue. I thought Purdue was going to get upset by Old Dominion.
You thought they were going to lose to Old Dominion?
That was because I thought of upsets. All right, because I thought about the UC Irvine game against Kansas State, and I thought Kansas State, but I was thinking about upsets. It's all about upsets.
That's what March Madness is about. I actually called UC Irvine upsetting Kansas State, but I did not have them. I did not have them playing against Oregon. I had them playing against Wisconsin. I'm ashamed of Wisconsin because they're the Big Ten. They should do better.
Oh, I know, but I still thought Oregon was going to win, and I have them going not that far actually. Right. UVA is going to beat them.
So right now we're going to break down the Sweet 16. There's Duke, and Duke will be playing Virginia Tech, the one seed against the 4 seed. Then there's LSU against Michigan State, which is the 2 and the 3. That is in I forgot what the region that is. I can't see what region it is.
East, I think.
I believe it's the East region.
Yeah.
Yes, the East region. In the West region, we have Gonzaga playing Florida State, a 1 against a 4 as well. And yeah, the East and the West bracket is kind of easy. It's the 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the 2 seed Michigan is also going to play Texas Tech in the West region. In the Midwest, it's going to be North Carolina against Auburn. Auburn's a 5th seed. North Carolina's the 1 seed. And we got the 2 and a 3 seed again, which is Houston and Kentucky. And then in the South region, we got Virginia, the 1 seed, playing Oregon, a 12 seed.
Yeah, but I still don't think that's a Cinderella run. I mean, Oregon has been good.
Oregon's really good. They're not. Yeah, don't be surprised if Oregon upsets Virginia. I can definitely see that happening. And then we have Purdue against Tennessee. So far, there's one perfect bracket left. This is the first time that there's been a perfect bracket that's called every game until the Sweet 16. And so far, and what they're calling is they have Duke against Michigan State in the Elite Eight, Virginia against Tennessee in the Elite Eight, North Carolina against Kentucky. Okay, they have all 1 and 2 seeds in the Elite Eight.
Exactly.
Much.
You see, and there's no upsets right now.
In the round of 32, there were no upsets at all, except for you might be able to consider the 5 seed beating the 4 seed, Auburn beating Kansas. You can call that.
But
that's not really
that
big big of an upset. Though.
Those
it's
two,
a 5 and a 4.
They're very good teams.
Yeah, so nothing surprising happened in the round of 32. All the big upsets were in the first round.
Like Liberty.
He's not calling anything big. He or she, whoever had this bracket, except for the one thing they do have is in the Final Four. They have Duke, Gonzaga. Okay, they have all 3 1 seeds, except they have Kentucky coming out of the Midwest instead of North Carolina.
What?
Yeah, it said North Carolina coming out of the Midwest in the Final Four. They're having Kentucky, and then in the championship they have Gonzaga beating Duke in the Final Four and Kentucky beating Virginia in the Final Four, and they have Gonzaga win the championship, which I don't see that happening. So
Gonzaga,
I'll be surprised if this bracket actually stays intact.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the only perfect bracket left, right?
Yeah, and it's not looking good in the future. I mean,
yeah, I would be surprised if any of that actually comes true.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's a bunch of 1 seed. It's a bunch of 2 seeds are playing 3 seeds, which there's I would not be. I can see Houston beating Kentucky. I can definitely see Michigan and Michigan State making the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
Duke, surprise. The thing about the UCF and Duke game, even though UCF got ripped off and should have won,
I think they should have won.
They showed that Duke is beatable. They're not the unbeatable powerhouse. That Sports Center and all of them are putting out to be. They're definitely a beatable team.
Well, yeah, but I don't think Virginia Tech is the team to, because UCF was the only team so far in the tournament that actually had a chance against Duke, and now you have Virginia Tech. And honest to God, at least to me, I feel like Duke might actually just beat them by like 20 points. That's just my opinion. But
they had a 7'6" guy. The 7'6" Taco.
That was a big help.
Helped.
That was a big help. And Virginia Tech has some quality players, but they don't have the same talent as UCF did.
Because Duke's not a big team, are they? They're not. They don't have any really big men. I mean, like Zion's
a monster.
Yeah, but he's not. Height wise, they're not really that tall of a team.
Not necessarily.
So if you have that size advantage, that can definitely help you. I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So that brings us to a hypothetical situation. Okay, if Purdue somehow made it to the national championship and faced Duke, do you think Purdue would have a chance?
I don't know.
Because they have a 7'3" guy. They have Matt Harms, a 7'3" guy who's really good under the basket.
Yeah, but I'm not sure.
And they have, and what exactly happened against the Villanova and Purdue game was at first they tried to shut down Matt Harms, and Matt Harms couldn't get to the bucket. And then they have 4 good outside 3-point shooters.
That's true, and that's the thing that UCF did not have.
Yeah, UCF doesn't have that many good 3-point shooters. Where
Purdue they had Fall there, but they didn't have the shooters.
Because Purdue has Sasha Stefan. Oh yeah, this is me being a big time Boulder fan, but Purdue has Carson Edwards, who scored. By the way, I just said it before, but scored 42 points against Villanova. 9 3-pointers, which is a school record. Also,
that's crazy.
They have Ryan Klein. They have Grady Eifert. And they also have, I said Sasha Stefanovic. Matt Harms can also shoot threes as well, the 7-footer. I've seen him shoot threes, and he's pretty good at shooting threes.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
And talk about Fletcher McGee.
Oh, from Wofford?
From Wofford. He missed every single 3-pointer. And this guy is supposedly the sharpshooter of the NCAA, the Steph Curry of NCAA.
Didn't he break the NCAA record or something for career amount 3-pointers?
Exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
That's
Wofford.
Insane.
Okay, they would have upset it.
And he missed every 3.
He missed every single 3.
And
he choked so bad.
They only lost by 6.
Yeah.
And their big star player was playing like absolute garbage that night.
Yeah, it was trash. I could not have. I saw the whole game because I heard all this hype about Wofford, and I had them going because I thought they were going to upset Kentucky. And I see that this guy, the guy that they hyped all about, and he failed every single three-pointer. And I was shocked beyond belief.
Yeah.
He should go to home in shame because
Is he a senior?
Yes, he's a senior.
Okay.
That was his last game, and that's the last impression. That's his last performance ever.
The guy who holds the record for most three-pointers in a career, his last game didn't make a single three-pointer.
That's disappointing. I honestly, that will overshadow everything, all of his accomplishments, because that will go down, honestly.
Okay, so who do you think is gonna? Okay, so did you have a bracket pulled up, right?
Yes.
Okay, so who do you think is gonna make it onto Elite Eight? We're not gonna go to the Final Four or anything like that.
I have in the Midwest. I have UNC and Houston.
Okay, so Houston against North Carolina.
Yeah.
I definitely see that more than Kentucky.
Yeah, I have in the South. I have UVA and Tennessee.
Dang it! I have Virginia and Purdue.
Well, I mean,
I'm a little biased there.
Yeah,
though.
I know,
and
I mean, like that's hard to do with brackets because you sometimes have to put your bias aside.
But the thing is, it depends on which Purdue shows up to play. If it was the Purdue that showed up against Villanova, it's a no-brainer. Purdue's going to make it to Elite Eight.
I wouldn't doubt it. I honestly wouldn't. But if they have a different performance, then they might get destroyed.
If they play like they against Old Dominion, they're going to be in trouble.
Oh yeah, and
they played it okay against Old Dominion.
Yeah, so on the East, my bracket got all screwed up on the East because I had Mississippi Tech. I mean, not Mississippi Tech. I had Mississippi State
beating Liberty. Yeah, not many people expected Liberty to win the first game.
Exactly. So, like, I had them against Michigan State, and then I also had in the West. I had Florida State with Michigan.
Oh wait, you had Mississippi State against Michigan State in the Elite.
Yeah,
in
I thought
Elite
Duke was gonna get.
Okay,
upset.
No, we're talking about the actual bracket. Like, who do you think is gonna make the Elite Eight? That's what we're talking about.
Oh yeah.
Not your bracket. We're talking about what the official bracket is currently. So it's either Duke and Virginia Tech against LSU and Michigan State. So who do you think's gonna be in the Elite Eight there? Who do you think's?
I don't want to say Duke, but they might.
It's probably gonna be Duke.
It's gonna be Duke.
I think Virginia Tech can pull the upset, but it'll be
I don't know,
it'll be difficult. Yeah, I agree. So how about in the West region? Who do you have there? Who do you think's gonna make it there? Because Gonzaga and Florida State against Texas Tech and Michigan, and Texas Tech against Michigan.
I think it might be Gonzaga and Michigan.
Yeah, I see Gonzaga. I think Michigan's going to beat Gonzaga. I think Michigan's going to beat Gonzaga.
Oh yeah, I feel like it might happen.
Gonzaga is in a crappy conference where they win it every year. Mm-hmm. Almost every single year, Gonzaga is the only team out of their conference to make the tournament. This year was an exception because St. Mary's won their conference tournament. That's the only reason why they had them in, because they didn't win that. No other team in that conference gets an at-large bid except for Gonzaga.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It's insane. So yeah, I don't think Gonzaga. I'm surprised Gonzaga made it to Sweet 16. I had them losing to Baylor.
Yeah, same here, man. I had them losing to Baylor.
Yeah. I'm surprised Gonzaga made it to Sweet 16. All right, we've gone a little too far. So when we come back, we'll have Dr. Buchanan, the smartest man on campus.
Yeah, stay tuned, everybody.
We are back, and we have the legendary Dr. Tom Buchanan here in the guest chair, and he's here to do some trivia for us, to answer some trivia to prove to you all that he's the smartest man on campus, possibly the world.
Thank you.
So
Checks in the mail.
so we'll have Richard start us off. Let's get that closer.
Okay.
So you can he'll pick you up.
All right, so Kyle and I have been doing a lot of research in history, and we thought that we could start you off with some probably easier ones.
Good.
So-
Just a couple warm-ups.
Yeah, a
Easy
couple
works for me,
warm-ups,
yes.
Yeah.
Who's the first president of the United States?
No, that's a tough one there. Well, let's go with George Washington.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, it's George
I was
Washington.
correct. Okay.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
Another warm-up. When did the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor?
Well, I believe that was December 7th, 1941.
Okay, he's on a roll.
All right.
He's on fire.
Okay.
He is on fire.
No.
All right, okay, so we have one that's kind of a trick question.
Okay.
Okay, so in the American Revolution, where did the Battle of Bunker Hill take place?
On Breeds Hill.
Correct.
That is actually
Correct.
true.
That's a real misnomer historically, and they still refer to it as Bunker Hill.
Yeah,
but
I know. I didn't even
It was
know
the hill
that.
next to it.
Most
Yes.
of it took place on Breeds Hill. That's correct.
Exactly. Like I
Ancient
didn't know
fake news there, I guess.
that. Oh, there it is. There it is. Yeah.
Ancient fake news.
Yes.
Who was the first wife of Henry VIII?
That would have been Catherine of Aragon.
Good, good. Okay.
I've seen End of the Thousand Days like 1,000 times. So.
There we go. Okay. This will be a tough one. Which dictator composed 6 operas?
Wow. I'm stalling for time here by taking a drink. Dictator. Well, Mussolini comes to mind. I don't know.
That's exactly what I
That's
said.
what-
Remember?
that's-
Yeah, that's
oh,
what
Richard
I
thought.
said.
That's
Yeah.
what
I was thinking Italian dictators, you know.
Yeah,
but,
I mean,
Kim
opera
Jong-
makes sense,
Kim
right?
Jong-il.
Oh, Kim. Oh, really?
Yes.
I did not know.
Yeah,
that.
I didn't know that. I was very surprised that he actually managed.
Thought he was famous for his rockets and his bad haircuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad hair.
I had no
His
idea
son
he
comes to
composed
mind.
it.
His son's the same way.
Yes. Right.
Okay. Which famously known criminal opened a soup kitchen?
I believe that'd be Mr. Alphonse Capone, Al
Yes.
Capone
Yeah.
in Chicago during the Depression.
Very, very.
One of the
true.
reasons why people didn't inform on him to the police, among other reasons.
He was seen like as a vigilante, wasn't he, or like some type of Robin Hood? Cause
Yeah, some sort of like a populist leader. He tried to convince the people that he was more on their side than the corrupt police. You know, and they would often protect him, you know, not testify against him and so forth.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, like from what I've heard from Al Capone, his stories are crazy. Like the St. Valentine's Day massacre and all that, and all this other stuff that happened concerning him, and all these like theories about how he actually was a really good guy, and then like the police were just after him because of his money or something like that. But there's many different theories about Al Capone.
Well, that was the image that Capone certainly wanted to get out there. In reality, of course, he was a hardened, vicious criminal. The St. Valentine's Day massacre, Capone made it known that he was in Florida at the time that happened, so they wouldn't hold him accountable. But he did arrange it, and it happened to wipe out the Moran gang, which was his top competition for beer in Chicago.
Oh yeah.
So you know, a detective will tell you when there's a murder. First people you look at are those who stand the most gain by that person's death.
Yeah.
So who stood the most to gain by wiping out the Moran gang?
Capone.
Capone. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That also brings to another interesting thing is out of all the murders he's behind, the bootlegging and everything, he was busted for tax evasion.
That's the one thing they could get him on. And what could he really do? You know, he couldn't file
Yeah.
his taxes and say, well, I made this much from extortion, and this much from prostitution, and this one from, illegal alcohol, which at that time almost all alcohol was illegal.
Yeah.
So, that's what they got him for. Of course, Tom Dewey and the other prosecutors who went after him were glad to get him on that. That one didn't require a lot of people coming forth to testify against him. It just required, books and records.
The next one is a U.S. president one. So this one you might actually know.
I hope there's something.
Who's the first U.S. president who's actually born in the United States?
Well, good question. This would be born after the American Revolution.
Yes.
Is it William Henry Harrison?
No.
1778? No? Okay.
Martin Van Buren
Ah,
was the first one.
the man right before Harrison. Oh,
Yes. So
very good.
Yeah. So I think William Henry Harrison is older than Martin Van Buren, but Martin Van Buren was president before.
Exactly. Harrison succeeded him to office in 1841. Of course, he wasn't there to enjoy it very long.
Yeah.
30 days.
Yeah, he caught pneumonia on Inauguration Day and died a month later.
What a sad story. And did you know that not Martin Luther, that's a different person. Martin Van Buren was the first American president to have his English was a second language.
It was, yes, in his family they grew up speaking Dutch.
Yeah.
Because the Van Burens were an ancient family in New York, and they went back to pre-1660, and before that, New York was New Amsterdam and was a Dutch colony.
Yeah, very interesting. There was when you asked like the first U.S. president was George Washington, and now there have been historians that debated the legitimacy of that fact.
Yeah.
There is supposedly
what exactly gets people to think that George Washington may not be the first president?
Because there supposedly is John Hanson. He was the president of the Continental under the Articles of Confederation. He was technically the first president of the United States, but
there wasn't an executive branch under the Articles of
Confederation. I think it was that the Articles of Confederation failed, so that made that government cease to exist, and then the Constitution was put in place.
Very good. The Articles of Confederation was our first national government, but it wasn't very good. And there was a position called President of the United States, but he was just one of the 13 ambassadors or representatives who basically were the Articles of Confederation. Each state had one representative called an ambassador, so that tells you something. Ambassadors, their country. So it basically says these states thought of themselves as independent countries. And one of them was chosen periodically to be called President of the United States, but it was nothing like the position that we have today under the Constitution. So Washington was the first president under the U.S. Constitution, and it was a far more powerful office than its namesake back in the Articles government.
It's true.
Another question I have is, what was the name of the German state that preceded Nazi Germany?
Was that the Weimar Republic?
Correct.
That is correct. That took me a while to figure out.
That was the government between the fall of the Kaiser, Kaiser Wilhelm, 1918, and the rise of Nazism and it coming to power in 1933. It was called Weimar because that's a city in Germany where its constitution was signed. But it had all kinds of problems. The German people had no experience with democracy, and they were angry and bitter because of the Versailles Treaty, and there was economic unrest. And, of course, in 1929, Germany is hurt by the Depression every bit as much, if not more so, than the United States was. We forget that was a worldwide economic collapse. So we're lucky. In the United States, the Depression brought Franklin Roosevelt to power, but in Germany, it brought Adolf Hitler to power, and the Germans in the world got the worst of that deal. So.
This is probably an easy one for you.
That's what I like. A slow pitch right over the middle of the plate there.
Which captain claimed the first naval victory for the United States in the Revolutionary War?
Well, we had two outstanding ones, John Barry and John Paul Jones. I'll say Jones.
Yes.
It was Jones.
He's also the basis for Led Zeppelin.
There you go.
A different John Paul Jones.
I knew he was going to say that.
Okay. This one's pretty much almost about your job. Who's considered the father of history?
Well, I think you'd have to go back to the Greeks for that. Perhaps Herodotus?
Correct. Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, it's like a history book, literally.
Yeah.
It's a history book.
Guys, I just always found history interesting. How some people find soap operas interesting or they find their golf game interesting? I enjoyed history. Yeah. Everybody has their thing that they like.
Totally. Yeah.
And for me, it was that. So even as a kid, I loved reading history books. And I can remember like in 7th or 8th grade, like in social studies classes, and the teacher would say we're going to take notes. Everybody else was moaning and groaning. But I thought, neat. I like taking notes. I was always the little nerdling up there in the front row, with my hand up all the time, and with my pocket protector and my white socks. I was pretty cool, but I loved my history.
Yeah, I was that kid too. Honestly, I love history so much. Like whenever people were like, I don't like history at all, or social studies, I was pretty interested. I loved learning about government and presidents and stuff. Well, yeah, the homework was kind of like tedious and stuff, but
It's
it
not
was
just
just
history;
like
it's just homework in general.
Yeah, that's the nature of homework, I suppose. But I've always thought, I'm going to paraphrase George Will, the writer who originally said this in reference to baseball, but I think it applies to history too. He said, baseball is dull only to dull minds, and I think history is dull only to dull minds. People who can't think out of a box, who don't have any interest in the world. Mm-hmm. Why did this happen? I mean, most things, there's concrete reasons why,
Yeah,
and these people from history are interesting. Stephen King, Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, the great science fiction writers, they couldn't make up people as interesting as those who really existed. Mm-hmm. So, they're fun to learn about. And I think we owe something of a debt to the people of the past who made sacrifices, made tough decisions to impact our life for the better.
Yeah.
That's also, the books that today I don't like. I always like reading the old classic, the classic books like Jules Verne's novels. Also, Ernest Hemingway. What's the For Whom the Bell Tolls? I really like that book.
Has some historic background to that book.
Yeah, that one's not World War I,
Spanish Civil War.
Yeah, Civil War. That's what it was.
Precursor to the World War II, you could say.
Yes. Here's another trivia. I've been asking all of them. I'll pass it over to you.
All right. Well, this is the last one, and then you're gonna go test
ask you
our
something.
We're
knowledge.
gonna test our
All right.
knowledge or lack thereof.
There we go.
Okay.
So this one, it's probably going to be easy. Which U.S. general said, I think it was before the war, was it? Before the theater? That I shall return.
That would be General Douglas MacArthur when he had to retreat from the Philippines.
I think I gave it away with theater. Pacific theater. Well, it also could have been the European theater, but I mean, like, people usually associate that with the Pacific.
Yeah.
Well, first I was
Yeah,
thinking
that's
like movie theaters or something, and then I thought, what would a general have to do with a movie theater? But I was familiar with the quote.
Yeah.
Good questions.
Mm-hmm. So, we want to know how much we actually learned back in history class.
All right.
Yeah, we want to know.
Find out how well we pay attention. I
Well-
have an excuse though because I haven't had your class. I haven't had you as an instructor.
Here's a question I asked with you present on Saturday, so we'll see if you were paying attention there, young man. So I put you on the. I'm going to embarrass you. No, you'll
Oh
be fine.
yeah. The president.
We've had 4 American presidents be assassinated. 2 are very famous: Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy. Who's one of the other 2?
I'll name one of them.
McKinley
Yes,
Garfield.
and Garfield.
that's
Yeah.
me giving the guys a rim shot there from Las Vegas. They're on a roll here. I thought I might have a stumper in that one. Okay, let me see if I can do this. All right, who was the first president to die in office?
Harrison.
Would be Harrison.
William Henry Harrison.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. I better toughen up my game here a little bit. All right. The Cold War existed from roughly the end of World War II until the 1990s. It was a big rivalry between 2 very powerful countries. What 2 countries were they?
The United States.
And the Soviet Union.
Very good.
People would say Russia, but technically it wasn't Russia. 'Cause
No.
it's the Soviet Union.
Soviet
There we
Union.
go.
Although I would have accepted the Ruskies. Okay. World War I is sometimes called the death of the monarchs. Can you think how many, let's rephrase this, how many monarchies, major monarchies or royal families lost their power as a result of the First World War? There were at least 4.
The Ottoman Empire was one of them.
Yes.
The Ottomans in Turkey.
I would say the Germans.
Do you remember the name of the German royal family? It was a mouthful.
Oh my goodness. I can't remember that. All I know is that it was the Kaiser Wilhelm.
Right, his family.
Yeah.
Their surname was Hohenzollerns.
Oh.
And they were from Prussia, this North German militarized state. That was the German state that had unified Germany into one country back in 1870. But then young Kaiser Wilhelm II blew it and made a series of terrible decisions.
Yeah.
So the German Empire was only around from 1871 to 1918 when it collapsed. Okay, so we have the Ottomans in Turkey. We have the Hohenzollerns in Germany. Can you think of any other royal families that fell?
It was the Austria-Hungary when the...
Very good. What was that family name?
I know that it was the Archduke Franz Ferdinand.
Franz Ferdinand was the one who was assassinated.
Yeah, the one who was
In
assassinated.
1914, that helped start the war. His uncle was Franz Joseph, who was the old emperor.
Yeah, that's the guy.
And he died during the war. The last emperor there was Karl. But any idea what the name of the royal family was? You know quite a bit.
I literally had it, but I just can't.
I think it'll probably come to you. The Habsburgs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There we go.
And of course, one other empire, the largest on earth, the largest country on earth, had a monarch until toward the end of the First World War. And he met a terrible fate.
Russia.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Nicholas
Nicholas II and his wife.
the Romanovs.
Right. Very good.
There we go.
It was tragic. After the war, in the summer of 1918, Nicholas, the former emperor, his wife, his 4 daughters, and his son, and some retainers were all murdered in cold blood. And, ugly, awful, ghastly thing to do, but that's the nature of war, and that's the nature of extremist ideologies. Horrible things happen sometimes.
Very true.
Are you ready to go on? Shall I
Yes.
ask you some more?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. All right. Which president created the Department of Education? It's fairly recent.
This would be
Fairly recent.
around the mid-1900s.
Within the last 50 years.
Oh, okay. Let me think.
And he happens to be still alive, as a matter of fact.
Carter.
Jimmy
There
Carter.
we go.
Okay. A former U.S. senator recently passed away who wrote both the 25th and the 26th constitutional amendments. Can you recall who he was? He was from Indiana, an Indiana senator.
Birch Bayh.
Very good.
There we go.
Oh, you guys are... you must have had Tom Buchanan for history or political science or something.
He did.
That's very true. Yeah, I had a
actually
political
did.
science.
All right.
I'm surprised I'm actually doing well.
Let me see if I can... Oh, by the way, you were talking about the collapse of these monarchies. The Chinese monarchy collapsed right before the war in 1911. They were the Manchus. So that was the last, of Imperial China. All right. Oh, let's go here. In 1958, the Fourth Republic in France collapsed, so the Fifth Republic was created under an old French war hero, a hero in France. His name literally means "of France." Do you know who this person is? So he was a French war hero, resistance leader during World War II, and one of the creators of the Fifth Republic, and came to power under the Fifth Republic in 1958.
I really wanted to make a French joke. Right? Something about to be a war hero in France, you got to survive at least a week.
Oh, ouch.
Survive at least a week.
You know what Homer Simpson calls the French? Cheese-eating surrender monkeys.
Oh yeah.
that probably would be politically incorrect.
We'll probably have to edit that out.
Yeah, this will have to come out.
Edit that out.
Yeah, unless we want war with France.
That's true.
Yeah, we'll win.
No way. I'm trying to think of the name. I feel like the last name, the
You'll
surname.
definitely recognize the name.
Assume it's some Francis.
Do you want his first name? Would that help?
First name, yes.
Charles.
Le Franc?
Close. Charles de Gaulle.
De Gaulle.
Oh,
De Gaulle
De
means
Gaulle.
Gaulle is the old Roman term for
Oh
France.
yeah, that is. Yeah, I learned that way back when, like
Okay.
in freshman year.
We just had the Ides of March. That's the 15th of the month of March. What is the historical significance of the Ides of March? And this goes all the way back to 44 BCE.
Beware the Ides of March. The
What happened?
assassination, the murder, or when the Senate killed Julius Caesar.
Very good.
I did a video on that, like
Yeah,
in
to
8th grade.
root.
Yeah, in 8th grade, I did like a short movie about
you should
Julius
have acted
Caesar.
it out.
Yeah, I was
Caesar
Brutus.
walking down the street, and then here's all his friends walking up to him, and oh no, what's that? They have knives. They're stabbing him, and then you can have a very histrionic death, full of emotions and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
you could have like ketchup on your sheets, for your blood effects and stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. I mean, yeah, I was like, I need to be Brutus just because I wanted to. Yeah, and one of my friends
that's cool.
was.
We folks seem to be up on your Roman history, so let me ask you another. After Caesar's death, there was a period of chaos, but then eventually his nephew came to power, whose name was originally Octavian. But he changed his name to a term that means the wise one, And that term was used for the name of another month added to the calendar. He felt that if his uncle could have a calendar month named after him, July from Julius, he could have a month named after him. So
Augustus.
Augustus.
I actually knew that.
Yeah. So
Octavian was his name. Augustus means the wise one. So if you're naming yourself Augustus, you have a pretty healthy self-concept.
Octavian, October.
What surprises me is that there was originally 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
So you know how like October, November, and December, like those are suffixes, not or prefixes. There we go. I should catch up on my grammar instead of history. Oct, Nov, and Dec, which is like 8, 9, and 10. So there were supposedly 10 months. But these guys decided, hey, I want to add 2 more months to the year. So they're just like, hey, let me name one after me and put it right down in the middle.
September, that prefix meant 7.
7, there we go.
Yeah.
Yes. And then that.
But I guess if you're Julius Caesar and you want to add another month and name it after yourself, who's going to stop you?
No.
Except those
You're the
guys on the
emperor.
Ides of March. It's sad and tragic. His wife, Calpurnia, had a dream, and she had dreamt that he was going to be attacked that day. So she told him, keep your bodyguard nearby. But Julius thought, oh, you're being a silly woman. Nobody's going to harm me. So he dismissed his bodyguard just to show her how confident he was that he was safe. And that turned out to be a really bad idea.
Clap.
Yeah, we all know that happens throughout history. History repeats itself. Honestly, like so many people meet their fates and they know for a fact that something's going to happen, but they just ignore it and then something happens.
Well, a lot of people think that Lincoln knew that his death was right around the corner.
Oh, yeah.
The night of his death, he was talking to his bodyguard who wanted to come with him. Lincoln didn't. He said no. I think Lincoln thought that there was going to be an attack on him. He didn't want his lifeguard to be in danger. And that fellow said that his name was Crooks. He said Lincoln always said to him, "Good night, Crooks." But that night, for the first time only, he said, "Goodbye, Crooks."
Yeah, that's pretty
like
cryptic, scary.
Like a little bit before his assassination, I don't think it was Lincoln. I think was it Lincoln's son that saved John Wilkes Booth's brother?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, something like that.
One of those interesting ironies of history. It
Very
was early in the Civil War, and Robert Todd Lincoln, Lincoln's oldest son, was on a train platform waiting for a train to come. Someone pushed him in front of an oncoming train. Now, we've never known, was that an attempt to kill him and maybe hurt his father that way, of course, or was it just an accident? We don't know. But Edwin Booth, famous actor, was there, saw that happen, and he reached over quickly and grabbed him and pulled him back onto the platform and away from the oncoming train, and then saved his life. So
That's insane.
So ironic.
That is crazy.
There's tons of insane coincidences.
Oh yeah.
There was one I watched Vsauce. So
Yeah, I watched
Vsauce. There's another one where this guy got struck by lightning, I think 3 times in his life, and after he died, lightning struck his grave. So that's just,
sometimes, and you'll probably have to edit this out, sometimes you're just screwed.
Oh yeah. No, I'm just you're just so unlucky.
You take all precautions, you can try to be smart, you can try to safeguard yourself, and stuff happens anyway.
Yeah, it just does. Maybe you're just an unlucky person in the world, and just that's just the world telling you that.
I'm ready for more trivia.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely ready.
Oh, okay. I should have written down some tough questions here.
Keep them easy.
Okay. Who was president during what was called the Teapot Dome scandal?
Oh, I learned this. God.
Oh, have I stumped the boy geniuses here today?
Probably.
I'm not a genius. I'm just lucky. I'm just getting lucky.
Oh goodness, I've definitely learned about this, and I'm tempted to say that it was during Warren G. Harding.
Very good.
Ah, there we go. There we go.
Rim shot there for you. Harding was only president for approximately 2.5 years because he died presumably of a heart attack. His body was never examined, and he was immediately placed into a sealed coffin, and then the body was buried under a huge slab of concrete. So
could have been assassinated.
Who knows? That's one body that will probably never be examined. But a lot of people call Harding the worst president ever, or he's always in the competition for that inglorious title. But and it's because of the various scandals in his administration. Plus, Harding was a man who enjoyed life. He'd have people over to the White House to drink and smoke and play cards and stuff, and drinking, even though it was prohibition.
Yeah.
And he was quite a womanizer. He was the father of at least one illegitimate child.
So he was the first version of Bill Clinton.
You might have said that. Yes.
Yeah.
It might have even, I don't know. He was pretty daring. He had a closet where he used to, shall we say, entertain his lady friends. And he had the White House staff set up a series of buzzers through his quarters. And whenever the lady he called the Duchess, his wife, Florence, anytime she came anywhere near the closet when the president was in there entertaining, the White House staff would start ringing those buzzers to give him some warning, so he could sneak out the other door.
Oh.
Quite a guy.
Wow.
But there were good things under Harding, too, which is a point I tried to make to my government class this morning. We say this president's a failure because he did this bad thing and he didn't do that and so on and so forth. But most of them have something else on the ledger, too, on the good side, and we're so often to overlook that.
Yeah.
Harding signed a treaty with Colombia to compensate them for the loss of Panama, which we just kind of stole from them so TR could build the canal. And he signed a treaty with Germany, since we were still technically at war. Remember, we never ratified the Versailles Treaty.
Yeah.
And he set Woodrow Wilson's political prisoners free, which was good. This is years after the war. Wilson never did let them out, but Harding did.
Yeah.
He settled a coal strike. He created the Veterans Bureau. He created a budget of the a bureau of the budget to help streamline budgeting. Two treaties, the 5 and 9 Power Act, helped make the navies of the world safer by cutting back on the number of battleships on the high seas. There's quite a lot of good things there in 2.5 years, but you never, ever, ever hear any of that.
Yeah.
And they talk about his bad appointments, people like Albert Fall, Secretary of the Interior, and Harry Daugherty in the Justice Department, who were crooks.
Yeah.
But they forget people like Herbert Hoover, who was an outstanding, head of the Commerce Department. They forget Andrew Mellon, who was an outstanding Secretary of the Treasury. They forget Charles Evans Hughes, who was an outstanding Secretary of State. And they forget his appointment of former President William Howard Taft to be Chief Justice, which was a very good pick. So I guess I'd say like who you want and, whatever you feel about it, but just be fair. There's no president who, with maybe just 1 or 2 exceptions, but almost all presidents did something.
Right.
And certainly not one of them ever wanted to be considered a failure. They tried.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right, definitely.
It's always so easy to be on the sidelines and criticize presidents who have all the pressure in the world on them all the time.
Right, did you just think how stressful that job is?
Oh, I'm surprised they don't all die of heart attacks.
Oh, I know.
It's insane.
Any decision you make as president...
Especially Trump. I'm surprised he hasn't died of heart attack.
Yeah.
Have you seen his diet?
Oh,
Have
yeah.
you seen his diet?
Oh, I know. If I were president, I'd immediately die of the stress.
I could not handle that kind of stress.
any decision you make as president is guaranteed to tick off millions of people.
Right.
So you
yeah.
make maybe like a small group happy, and then you make all these people out here really very, very angry with you. But that's the nature of the job. You have to make decisions.
Yeah.
And of course, since 1945, the President of the United States basically has the question of worldwide survival on his shoulders, since he controls the most powerful nuclear and hydrogen weapon arsenal in the world.
And you're in a world war at that point, and imagine the stress, because you have so many countries that are like dealing with this sort of danger, and you have not only the American people to worry about, you also have people in Europe, in Asia, all over the world, and you make a decision that's going to affect the entire planet. So only thinking about that will immediately give you just goosebumps.
Here's another thing, in case you need more goosebumps. Back during the days of the Cold War, approximately 1945 to 1990, you had the Soviet Union and the United States. They both had huge nuclear stockpiles. A few other countries did, but they were generally allied with one or the other two. So the point is, there was relatively tight control over the nuclear bombs. But in today's world, it's no longer just a bilateral world. There's a lot of countries that profess to having the bomb. And imagine there's quite a few, Japan, Germany, Israel, that probably have it and aren't talking about it. So it would seem to me the odds are much greater now of a nuclear war starting than it was during the depths of the Cold War, because at least the Soviets and the Americans knew how bad that would be.
Yeah.
And they knew that if they started a war, they're going to get pummeled too. They had nothing to gain by launching that first strike. But today, presumably a lot of crazy people are in power who have their finger on the button, and that scares the daylights out of me.
Same.
Right.
I mean, we have a lot of leaders around the world that have been touting about their nuclear weapons. And I mean, I'm not going to give any exception to the president. I mean, he does brag about it. And, he's the president. I mean, yeah, you have to have a mentality to have, control. And sometimes some people will take that literally, or some people will take that in a negative way, and then that gets like people frightened, obviously. And there are other leaders around the world that do that too. So the danger of having a nuclear war right now is like kind of high because of the people who are in control. And as long as people can keep themselves composed and like try to like settle their differences and have diplomacy, then I think everything will work out.
I hope. In today's world, India has a bomb, and so does Pakistan. These two countries border each other and just can't seem to stand each other.
Yeah, they never get along.
Yeah, kind of like Ireland and England for all those years. So that's frightening. The only reason I think perhaps they won't attack each other is just because they are so close. That nuclear dust and all those carcinogenic materials released by detonation don't recognize boundaries.
Oh yeah,
if you're in India and you bomb Pakistan, you're going to get a good dose of that yourself, and vice versa.
Yeah, and the thing is, we obviously know that they're much more powerful than the ones dropped on Japan.
Yeah, so much more powerful.
If I'm correct, those are the only two bombs that were ever dropped in history. But
there are bombs today which make both of those, the one on Hiroshima and the one on Nagasaki, look like ladyfinger firecrackers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we honestly have no idea how powerful these bombs are, which can be pretty scary.
Oh, I know.
We're always talking about how, God is on our side. There's a great old song by Bob Dylan called With God on Our Side. He's talking about how we won the country because God was on our side, and we conquered the Indians because God was on our side, and we whipped the Germans because God was on our side. But, I wish countries would go to a greater effort to make sure that they were on God's side, if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. Instead of claiming divine approval for all kinds of aggressions, why not try to actually live the words of the Bible or any of the holy books?
Yeah.
The very best defensive system is simply getting along with your neighbors.
Very true.
President Eisenhower made a very famous speech in 1953, after becoming president, and I have to paraphrase this, and I regret having to do so because it was a great speech. But he basically said, every rocket made is a theft of X number of schools for people. Every bomb made is the theft of, like 10,000 miles of paved roads for people. He's just talking about the cost of, this military-industrial complex and spending all this money on, these terrible new weapons. Because there is a great opportunity cost. If you're putting your money here, you're not putting it there. And the more money you put into bombs and weapons and jets and all that sort of thing, less money for schools, less money for libraries, less money for roads, less money for health care. It's sad.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, like, that's the type of old school Republican conservative ideals that they had back then. Eisenhower was...
I liked Eisenhower.
I definitely think he's on my top 5.
He built two great infrastructure improvements for us, the St. Lawrence Seaway and the interstate highway system. And he did it in such a way that he didn't leave us heavily in debt. Mm-hmm. He left with balanced budgets. He believed, what a novel idea, the federal government should pay its bills. We lost that somewhere. We have, $20 trillion in debt? And
yes.
Somewhere around that.
Yeah. Another slow clap.
Yeah.
I know. And we can't begin to even figure out a way to even pay the interest on that. And the heck of it is, I hate to say this, people my generation largely did this and spent all the money. It's like you have a credit card and you go out to Vegas, you have a really great time, and then you give the debt to your children or grandchildren and say, now you pay that off for me. That's all we've done. Whereas, like I said, Ike was looking to future generations. Mm-hmm. He knew the interstate highway system was going to help him out. He was an old man, but it would help people out in the future, and so that's why he built it. And back then they could get along with each other. Eisenhower was a Republican president, but the Speaker of the House was a Democrat from Texas named Sam Rayburn, and the leader of the Senate was the majority leader, a guy named Lyndon Johnson, a future president. So you have a Republican president, Eisenhower, working with Democrats, Rayburn and Johnson, leaders of the House and Senate respectively, and they worked together and got stuff done.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they don't do anything except insult each other, as far as I can tell.
It's so gridlocked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most politicians these days are putting party over country.
That's exactly what George Washington was concerned about. Washington didn't like political parties.
He wasn't in one.
No, and he was sad to see them come into existence during his administration.
Yeah.
Because he thought that people would come to put what they perceived as best for the party ahead of what was best for the country.
And what do you know?
Yeah.
I mean, we're living it now. We're living it now.
Well, in today's world, you look at any given time, there's one president But the other party is kind of secretly hoping, maybe not so secretly, that he falls on his face. Let's hope there's a Great Depression, just to make this guy unpopular so we can vote him out of office. So you have half the country hoping ill to the U.S. just to make the incumbent president look bad. Despite the fact that you're harming the nation by doing that, saying that, acting
It's not
that
just
way.
Politicians that think that way too. There's tons of people that think party over country all the time.
Yeah, it's very
Sad.
selfish nature, and
Me a couple times. I've been guilty of thinking that way.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I go back to Ike again. I'm not saying he was a great, perfect president, but he was pretty darn good. He said it's amazing what you can get accomplished if you don't care who gets the credit. But in Washington, each party's determined not to let the other party have any credit for anything good. So it's like a game of chess, and they're not actually trying to do anything positive. They're just trying to stop anything at all from happening, as far as I can tell. And it's sad because the American people elect those folks to deal with our problems, to try to come up with solutions as opposed to acting like 12-year-olds.
Exactly.
Jeez. Okay, I'm sorry. I was on my soapbox there. I got excited.
No, it's all right. A lot is very fascinating. There's another thing I've been looking to recently. I've actually been really interested is all the secret research the Nazis did. It's fascinating. Like the B-2 bomber, if I'm correct, it was first used in the 80s, I believe, the 80s or early 90s, and there's one in Germany in the 40s.
Well, the Germans, toward the end of the war, had these new terror weapons. Hitler thought they might pull victory out at the last moment. One was the V-1 rocket, which is actually just an airplane, but it was pilotless. They loaded it up with bombs. There's no pilot on it. You fly it over and drop the bombs, and that was it. But the really...
That's a drone, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's
Exactly.
back in the 40s.
But the real terror weapon was the V-2, which is an actual rocket. And, that as a concept is still used. The Iraqis used those Scud missiles, during the war.
Yeah.
They were V-2s, exact same principles. For all I know, they're the same rockets, just years later. So,
This would have been insane if we think would have happened if they actually used that technology against us. The outcome
I don't
would have-
know if we would have.
They probably would have won the war.
the thing about a V2 is you can hear it because it has a real high whine, but there's absolutely no defense. Your only hope is to be nowhere near where that thing hits the ground. And of course you don't know. So you just
Exactly.
pray and hope that I don't get blown to pieces here in the next few
It
seconds.
also weren't most of the scientists that were developing the nuclear bomb were most of them German as well.
At the end of the war, there was a race between the Soviets and the Americans to latch on to as many of the German scientists as they could, because the Germans were brilliant.
Oh yeah.
They here's something I find interesting. During the war, the German people were very hungry, so the Germans, the government took sawdust and compressed it and added a few flavors and artificial colorings and told the people it was fish, and they ate it, and they stayed alive. I'm not saying it's high cuisine, but it was something to fill their stomachs with, and all it was a compressed sawdust with flavoring and dyes added to it. And they created something called liquefied coal to run their tanks on because they're out of oil. So, necessity is the mother of invention. The Germans are very resourceful. Too bad they didn't use all that resourcefulness and all that energy for something good,
Yeah,
as opposed to waging a war.
Definitely. I find all that stuff very interesting. It's just insane how far ahead they were.
Mm-hmm.
They were ahead
for
of their
the
time. Yeah, they were
far
ahead of their time.
And that also brings up a bunch of conspiracy theories that they were time travelers and all that crazy stuff. But yeah, it's definitely it's just,
Yeah.
But I mean, just think all that technology is used today. It hasn't been for the most part, it hasn't been upgraded at all.
Well, the Germans, going back to the time of, the Enlightenment, the 1700s, had great schools, and they were disciplined. They were hard workers. They put a real significance and importance on having a good education, and they certainly had that Lutheran work ethic. They worked. It was a winning combination for them. On the other hand, they were also famous for their military schools. They're in Prussia. The Germans produced the best military officers. So kind of a bad combination, right?
Yeah.
You had the best industrialists, who could produce the best weapons, and you have the best generals who wanted to use them, unfortunately. Well, guys, I got to head on out here for too long. Do you have any other questions or anything?
No, we basically covered everything.
We were just doing trivia, then we ended up going deep into discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, well that's
Great.
what it's all about. I mean,
That was
that's
great.
just a great
Did we
conversation.
fix all the world's
Definitely.
problems?
No.
No, but
Well, I can come back. We can work on the rest of them some other time then. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Mr. Buchanan.
thank you.
My pleasure.
That was a great interview. I learned a lot, and it's very surprising to see how much Dr. Buchanan knows, and he's like an encyclopedia. Honestly.
Yeah, he's a walking encyclopedia. He's just. I'm not. I mean, I kind of say it sarcastically, but I really do believe that he was probably the smartest guy on campus.
Like honestly.
The center at Donaldson and Ancilla College, the whole center here. I think he's the smartest man on campus.
He's very knowledgeable, and if y'all have him for a teacher, he's a person that you can always go to and ask questions about. Like if you guys don't get anything about history or anything related to that topic, and if you guys have questions like that, he'll answer them.
I have a great idea for a segment. We can have Dr. Buchanan on, and if any students think they're smarter than Dr. Buchanan, have them on and see if.
Oh yeah, that would
that'd
be
be
a
great.
great idea.
That'd be amazing. If
That'd be fun to hear.
Well, first we got to get Dr. Buchanan okay with this, but if any of you want to challenge Dr. Buchanan to trivia and see if you're smarter than him, contact Joel Thomas, our faculty sponsor for the podcast club, and we'll have a quick trivia for you. And if you happen to beat Dr. Buchanan, we'll give you a prize for something.
Oh no, pizza. I don't know, something like that.
We'll buy you lunch.
There we go.
It's not going to be the food here. I'm not going to go into that topic, but we're not going to go into that topic now.
I know, man.
So we'll buy you lunch off campus.
Are you smarter
sometime.
than Dr. Buchanan?
If you are smarter than Dr. Buchanan, we can do a spoof of the theme song of "Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?" We can have a spoof.
A spoof, definitely, man. It's like that actually is a good idea because I don't know, like it's just very fun to learn about these fun facts and interesting things about our history and even about our world and the states. It's so cool. And I thought I knew a lot, but this man literally like has a lot of knowledge. He's very smart, very scholastic.
And I also believe that me and Dr. Buchanan, I personally think that me and him have something in common. Me and him kind of have the desire to learn. Like if there's something that we don't know, I mean, me personally, if it's something that I don't know, it kind of eats at me inside, and I have to find out. It's something I have to know. So I don't know if Dr. Buchanan's like that too, but I kind of feel like he has that kind of personality as well. And also, like you said, what he enjoyed doing is most people enjoyed going outside, do activities. He enjoyed learning stuff. He enjoyed to learn, which is very cool.
It's very nice. I mean, that's why he's so knowledgeable, is because he studied so much and he had that desire to learn and discover new things about us and about history and about everything in general. And that's the beauty of it, you know, like people kind of don't really appreciate history as much as they should. And it's very important because that's who we are. That's where we came from. That's very important stuff to learn, and we should never forget about that.
Yeah. Any mistakes that people have made in history, and if we try to forget about those mistakes are going to happen again.
Yeah, definitely. That's a lot of lessons can be learned from learning about history.
All right. Well, this podcast was very long. Was extra long. We apologize for that, but there's a lot of great content.
A lot of very good conversations.
So we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. So I'm Kyle Kunce,
and this is Richard Sanchez,
and we are signing off.
This podcast was made possible by a grant from the Lilly Foundation and the Linden Fund. Ancilla College is a ministry sponsored by the Poor Handsmaids of Jesus Christ and is part of the Center at Donaldson.
Ancilla College is accredited by the Higher Learning Commission, a regional accreditation agency recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. We would also like to thank the IT department at Ancilla and the Center at Donaldson for all their contributions.